Hello, my dears, and welcome back to our cozy corner of stories. Tonight, we journey to the realm of Asgard, home of the gods, for a tale of cunning, courage, and a very ambitious builder. We'll discover how a mysterious stranger challenged the gods themselves, offering to construct a mighty wall in exchange for the sun, the moon, and the beautiful goddess Freyja. Settle in, snuggle deep, and let's unravel the mystery of the Wall of Asgard. But just before we begin, if our stories help you drift off, please tap the like and subscribe buttons. In my channel, you can find Norse, Greek, and Egyptian mythology tales. Comment and tell me which myth you'd like to hear next. Your support help us craft and shape more calm stories for fellow night owls. And now let your shoulders sink softly into the mattress and your mind drift into today's tale. A gentle hush, thick and golden, fell over Asgard. It was not the silence of slumber, but the quiet reverence of a world held in perfect, shimmering balance. The very air tasted of ancient magic, and the sweet, clean scent of dew-kissed blossoms from the eternal orchards of Ida. The golden light of Gladsheim, the grandest of halls, shimmered with an almost liquid quality, painting the soaring arches and intricate carvings in hues of amber and rose. Each polished stone, each gleam of gold, seemed to hum with the deep, resonant song of creation. A soft breeze, impossibly gentle, carried the distant, melodious chimes of the Bifrost, a constant, reassuring whisper of connection to the cosmos. Asgard truly was a realm of impossible beauty, a jewel suspended in the boundless ether, a testament to the Aesir's power and the Allfather's wisdom. Yet beneath its tranquil surface, a subtle, insidious unease stirred, like a serpent uncoiling in the deepest roots of Yggdrasil. The mighty Aesir, once vigilant and ever ready for battle, had grown complacent, their strength softened by eons of unparalleled peace. The once impenetrable wall protecting Asgard, a colossal testament to ancient craft and forgotten magic, had crumbled. Not with a sudden, cataclysmic roar, but slowly, insidiously, like a mountain eroding under the relentless caress of time. Great fissures, gaping wounds in its once seamless might, marred its formidable presence. Where once its towering ramparts had reached for the heavens, now crumbling sections lay in dusty disarray, stark reminders of forgotten maintenance and neglected vigilance. Through these newly formed gaps, not yet wide enough for an army, but vast enough for whispers, stories of Jotunheim's encroaching darkness filtered in. They were chilling tales, carried on the frigid winds from the north, of ice giants stirring from their ancient slumbers, of their shadowed legions massing, their guttural war cries echoing across the frozen wastes. Odin, the Allfather, felt the encroaching dread most acutely from Hlidskjalf, his towering throne from which he could survey all 9 realms. His single, piercing eye, usually alight with cosmic wisdom, now held a shadow of deep concern. He saw Asgard's vulnerability laid bare, the very foundations of their security exposed. The once mighty defenses, the very bulwark against chaos, were now frail, illusion of strength. He remembered past wars, the terrible, rending cost in lives and spirit, the long, arduous battles against primordial forces that had nearly consumed all creation. The chilling thought of another such conflict, a war that could unravel the very fabric of their existence, tightened its icy grip around his ancient heart. Asgard had known peace too long, lulled into a false sense of security, their martial prowess dulled by prosperity, and the soft embrace of unending golden days. Thor, the mighty thunderer, felt it too, a low, persistent thrum of unease in his very bones. Mjolnir, usually a vibrant, living extension of his own power, felt heavy in his grasp, its familiar weight now burdened with a sense of impending doom. Border patrols, typically reporting nothing more than errant frost trolls or mischievous elves, now returned with grim faces and disturbing accounts. They spoke of strange omens, unnatural blizzards sweeping across the borderlands, ancient trees twisted into grotesque shapes, and unnerving shadows stirring at the very edge of the known world, just beyond the reach of Bifrost's golden light. Jotunheim, the land of giants, seemed closer, its frigid breath now perceptible even in the warmth of Asgard. Thor's usual booming laughter, a sound that could shake the very foundations of the hall, was subdued, replaced by a grim determination that etched itself onto his strong, noble features. He found himself spending more time at the training grounds, the rhythmic clang of hammer on shield echoing through the golden halls. A solitary, desperate attempt to hone his edge. Freyja, goddess of love, beauty, and war, ever watchful, sensed it most keenly of all. The magical currents that flowed through Asgard, usually a harmonious symphony, now shifted and pulsed erratically, like a troubled heart. The air itself felt charged with unspoken fears, a subtle, prickling sensation on her skin. Her golden apples, usually glowing with an inner luminescence, seemed duller, their life-giving energy subtly diminished. Her beloved cats, normally sleek and content, were restless, their emerald eyes wide and watchful, their soft purrs replaced by low, disquieted growls. She knew the terrible fragility of peace, having witnessed countless kingdoms rise and fall, seen the fleeting nature of even the most powerful empires. A new war, especially one against the ancient, primal forces of Jotunheim, would threaten everything she held dear. The beauty of Asgard, the lives of her people, the delicate balance of the realms. A cold dread, sharp as a winter's blade, pierced her heart. She decided, with a quiet resolve that belied her gentle appearance, to seek out Odin, to press upon him the urgency of the moment. The great hall of Gladsheim, usually a bastion of joyful feasting and boisterous celebration, now hummed with anxious voices, a low, disquieted murmur that filled the vast space. The golden light, though still brilliant, seemed to cast longer, more ominous shadows. Odin, his single eye weary but resolute, stood at the head of the great, polished table, his Gungnir clutched firmly in his hand. My kin, his voice, usually a thunderous command, was now laced with a rare tremor of concern. we face a dire challenge. Asgard stands vulnerable. Our ancient wall, the very shield that has protected us for millennia, has crumbled. A collective sigh, heavy with resignation, swept through the assembled Aesir. Tyr, the one-handed god of war, his face a mask of grim resolve, spoke first. His voice, usually ringing with the fervor of battle, was low and gravelly. Reports from the borders are unsettling, Allfather. Our scouts speak of Jotuns encroaching, their patrols pushing further south than ever before, testing our meager defenses. Heimdall, the ever-vigilant guardian of the Bifrost, his golden horn, Gijallarhorn, resting silently at his side, nodded, his eyes, usually seeing all, now narrowed with a focused intensity. I hear their movements, Allfather. The ice giants stir from their ancient sleep, their guttural chants echoing across the frozen plains. Their numbers grow. Frigg, Odin's wise and serene consort, her face etched with concern, added, "Our people are uneasy, my lord." They feel the shift in the air, the growing chill. Whispers of war spread like wildfire through the city. Idun, keeper of the golden apples that sustained the Aesir's eternal youth, looked pale, her usual vibrant glow dimmed by worry. Her hands, usually deft and swift, trembled slightly as she clutched a basket of her precious fruit. Loki, the trickster god, ever an enigma, watched the proceedings with a faint, unreadable smile playing on his lips, his emerald eyes glinting with an almost predatory amusement. He seemed to relish the chaos, the unfolding drama. Thor, his patience worn thin by the escalating tension, slammed his mighty fist onto the polished table, the sound echoing like a peal of thunder through the hall. Then we must rebuild. Immediately, a new wall stronger than before. Let them come. We will meet them with steel and thunder. His voice boomed, a desperate plea for action. Odin, ever the strategist, raised a hand, a gesture that commanded immediate silence. Building such a monumental defense, my son, requires immense resources, more than we currently possess, and time, which we are running out of. His gaze swept over his worried kin, each face reflecting the growing fear. Freyja, her presence radiating a quiet authority, stepped forward, her voice clear and resonant, cutting through the lingering tension. We cannot afford to delay, Allfather. The danger is closer than we think. The very fabric of our reality feels threatened. Her words held a profound weight. Her foresight, her deep connection to the currents of magic, was legendary, rarely, if ever, mistaken. The Aesir listened, their unease deepening. But who could possibly build such a wall? Demanded Njord, god of the sea, his voice gruff with concern. It would take ages, even with all our combined might. Sif, Thor's courageous wife, her golden hair shimmering, added, "It must be impenetrable, Allfather. Stronger than anything built before, able to withstand the might of the Jotun hordes." The council debated, their voices rising in a cacophony of desperate suggestions and unanswerable questions. But no viable solution emerged, only a deepening sense of helplessness. Odin's single, all-seeing eye swept over his kin, each face a reflection of their collective despair. A memory stirred within his ancient mind, an old tale, almost forgotten, of a pact made in a time before memory. A master builder from the shadow realms, a craftsman of impossible skill. Odin's eye widened imperceptibly, a flicker of something akin to desperate hope, mixed with profound apprehension. A risky, almost unthinkable idea formed in the depths of his strategic mind. "There is one," he began, his voice low, drawing the attention of every god and goddess in the hall. "A master builder, a craftsman of unparalleled skill, capable of raising mountains with his bare hands. He is from the frost giant's lineage." A collective gasp, sharp and sudden, filled the hall, sucking the very air from the chamber. The implications were staggering, almost blasphemous. Thor roared, his face contorted with disbelief and fury. "A giant? Father, are you mad? Make a pact with one of our oldest enemies? It's unthinkable." Odin, unwavering, held up a hand, silencing his son's protest. "He is a master of stone, Thor. A true artisan, unlike any other. He alone can raise a wall no foe can breach, one that will stand for all time. But what would he demand for such a monumental task?" asked Jefjan, goddess of the plow, her voice trembling with apprehension. The thought of a giant, even a master builder, entering Asgard, let alone dictating terms, was terrifying. Odin hesitated, a deep furrow appearing between his brows. The price was indeed steep, almost unbearable. He would demand Freyja, the goddess of love and beauty herself, and the sun and the moon. A collective outcry, a desperate chorus of disbelief and outrage, erupted from the assembled Aesir. Freyja, her face paling to the color of bone, gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock and horror. Thor protested loudly, his voice raw with fury. "Never. We would never sacrifice Freyja, nor the very lights of our world." Loki surprisingly chuckled, a low, conspiratorial sound that cut through the uproar. "A steep price indeed, Allfather," he purred, his eyes gleaming with an unholy delight. He saw an opportunity, a game to be played. Odin, his voice gaining its usual thunderous authority, silenced them all with a single, piercing gaze. "We have no other choice. This wall must be built, and quickly. The very survival of Asgard depends on it." Frigg, ever the voice of reason and compassion, stepped forward, her hand gently touching Odin's arm. "Is there truly no other way, my lord? No other craftsman, no other magic strong enough?" Odin shook his head, his gaze unwavering. "None with his skill, none with his speed. He is unmatched in his craft." He looked at Freyja, his expression a rare mix of apology and deep regret, a silent plea for understanding. Freyja felt trapped, a pawn in a cosmic game, her heart a leaden weight in her chest. Heimdall's grave voice, usually so calm and measured, added a chilling urgency to the desperate situation. "The signs are growing stronger, Allfather. The giants gather, their numbers swelling like a tidal wave. I hear the crunch of their boots on the ice, the rumble of their chariots. They will be here soon. Tyr nodded grimly, his hand instinctively going to the hilt of his sword. We cannot fight them without defenses, Allfather. Not against such numbers. Odin listened. His decision, though agonizing, was made. The builder has set his terms. He will build the wall in 18 months. If he fails to complete it within that time, he gets nothing. No payment, no reward, and he will be banished from Asgard forever. Loki, ever the opportunist, his eyes gleaming with a new, dangerous light, stepped forward, his voice dripping with an insincere helpfulness. And if he succeeds, Allfather, what then? Odin, his voice heavy with the weight of the impossible choice, stated, then Freyja, the sun, and the moon are his. A fresh wave of despair washed over the hall. Loki's eyes glinted, a spark of pure mischief igniting in their depths. What if the wall is not completed perfectly, Allfather? What if it lacks even a single stone, a single minute detail? He was probing, seeking a weakness, a loophole in the seemingly airtight agreement. Then he receives nothing, Odin stated, his voice firm, leaving no room for ambiguity. Exactly, Loki purred, a triumphant edge to his voice. He had found his opening. And what if he must finish it without any help whatsoever? No assistance from the Aesir, no magical aid. He paused, his gaze flicking to the builder's well-known, powerful steed, a creature of immense strength and speed. Without his steed, Odin considered, his single eye narrowing. Such a condition would make the task almost impossible, even for a master builder. It would test the limits of his endurance, his skill. He saw the flicker of hope in Freyja's eyes, a desperate, fragile spark. Without his steed, Odin repeated, weighing the implications. Loki nodded, a triumphant, almost predatory gleam in his eye. Without any assistance whatsoever, just him and his own 2 hands. A true test of his singular skill, wouldn't you agree? A murmur of surprise, then a collective sigh of relief rippled through the council. This was a challenging condition, one that pushed the boundaries of the feasible. It made the task almost impossible, even for a giant. If the builder failed under such stringent terms, Asgard, Freyja, the sun, and the moon would be safe. It was a gamble, but one that seemed overwhelmingly in their favor. Odin looked at Freyja, her face still pale, but a flicker of hope, fragile but undeniable, appeared in her beautiful eyes. It was a chance, however slim. Agreed, Odin said, his voice resonating with finality. The builder must complete the wall alone. No assistance from any being, no aid from his steed. Only his own strength and skill. Loki bowed slightly, a triumphant, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips. He had created a loophole, subtly twisting the terms to their advantage, or so it seemed. The council, though still uneasy at the very idea of a giant in Asgard, felt a sliver of relief, a desperate lightness in their strained hearts. The builder, they reasoned, was bound to fail. Freyja let out a slow, trembling breath, a sigh of release that was almost a sob. The decision was made. The pact was sealed, the words hanging heavy in the golden air of Gladsheim. Asgard's fate now rested on a giant's impossible task, and Loki's cunning, a dangerous dance between desperation and deceit. The soft twilight deepened outside the hall, casting the world in hues of bruised purple and deep indigo. The calm of Asgard, so long a comforting presence, was an illusion, a thin veil over a brewing storm. Beneath it, a maelstrom of ancient fears and new dangers was gathering force. The Wall of Asgard. Its story was about to begin, etched in stone, blood, and the echoes of a trickster's laughter. A quiet hush, thick and heavy like the fog that sometimes clung to the peaks of Asgard, fell over the golden city. It was a hush not of peace, but of anticipation, a held breath before a storm. The air, usually alive with the cheerful clang of hammers from the dwarven forges, or the distant laughter of the Aesir, was now unnervingly still. Then, from the shadowed archway that led from the outer realms, a cloaked figure emerged. He was shrouded in midnight blue, a color so deep it seemed to absorb the very light around him, making his form indistinct. He moved with a quiet, deliberate grace that belied his imposing stature. And as he approached the gathered gods and goddesses, a ripple of curiosity, quickly followed by a prickle of unease, spread through the divine assembly. Their usual boisterous conversations died, replaced by murmurs and exchanged glances. High above, on his gleaming throne of Aechlithskjolf, from which he could survey all 9 realms, Odin, the All-Father, observed the newcomer. His single, piercing eye, usually alight with wisdom and foresight, was now narrowed, a deep furrow appearing between his brows. He sensed power, unfamiliar and ancient, radiating from the cloaked man. The figure stopped in the very center of the council hall, his head bowed in a gesture that could have been reverence or a deliberate concealment. An aura of raw, untamed power pulsed around him, making the air crackle with an almost visible energy. It was a power that felt rooted in the earth itself, in the primordial forces that shaped mountains and carved valleys. The very stones beneath their feet seemed to hum faintly in response. Slowly, with an almost agonizing slowness that built the tension in the hall to a fever pitch, he raised his head. His eyes, when finally revealed, were unlike any the gods had ever seen. They were like ancient, unpolished stone, a deep, fathomless gray that seemed to hold the weight of forgotten ages, unblinking and utterly resolute. "I am a builder," he announced, his voice resonating through the vast hall, a deep, rumbling sound that echoed off the golden pillars and carved frescoes, filling every corner. It was a voice that commanded attention, a voice that spoke of immutable will. "I have heard of your plight. I know of the gaping breaches in your defenses, the whispers of giants lurking in the shadows of Jotunheim, their hunger for Asgard growing with each passing season. Your walls are vulnerable. They are strong, yes, but not impervious. I can build you an unbreachable wall, one no enemy, no matter how mighty, can ever pass." The gods stirred, a collective sigh of longing passing through their ranks. The thought of an unbreachable wall, a true bulwark against the encroaching chaos, was incredibly tempting. Security had always been a paramount concern, and recent skirmishes had highlighted the weaknesses in their current fortifications. But the builder continued, his gaze sweeping over their eager faces. But it will come at a price. A steep price, indeed. His stony gaze, unwavering and unnerving, then settled with chilling precision on Freyja, the exquisite goddess of love, beauty, and fertility, her golden hair shimmering like spun sunlight. I ask for the sun, the moon, and Freyja herself. A collective gasp, sharp and sudden, ripped through the assembly, like a gust of wind through dry leaves. To lose the sun, the very source of light and warmth that nourished their golden fields and brought joy to their days, was unimaginable. To lose the moon, the gentle guardian of the night, the weaver of dreams, was equally unthinkable. But to lose Freyja, the beloved, the radiant, the very embodiment of beauty and passion, was an affront so profound it stole their breath. Her eyes, usually sparkling with mirth, widened in shock, her hand instinctively rising to her throat. Thor, the mighty thunderer, his face contorted with rage, boomed, "You dare." His voice, usually a cheerful rumble, was now a clap of thunder, shaking the very foundations of the hall. Mjolnir, strapped to his belt, seemed to hum with his indignation. The gods erupted in a cacophony of outrage, their shouts echoing his fury. "Preposterous," cried one. "An insult," bellowed another. Their faces, usually serene and noble, were now flushed with anger, their hands clenching into fists. Amidst the uproar, Odin remained silent, his single eye unwavering, pondering the audacious offer. He was the All-Father, the Wise One, and he knew that even in madness, there could be opportunity. Loki, ever present, a shadow flitting at the fringes of the assembly, watched with a flicker of amusement dancing in his mischievous green eyes, swiftly followed by a spark of potential, a cunning idea beginning to take root in his fertile mind. He was a master of words, of loopholes, and this situation, though dire, presented a fascinating challenge. "This is madness." Tyr, the one-handed god of law and heroic glory, exclaimed, his voice ringing with righteous indignation. No one, not even the most desperate, would agree to such terms. "It is an affront to Asgard, but I build an unbreachable wall," the builder calmly repeated, his voice cutting through the din, unwavering as stone. "And I will do so in a single winter." His gaze swept over their agitated faces, utterly unmoved by their fury. Odin, his voice, a low rumble that instantly commanded attention, finally spoke. "And if you fail, if the winter ends and the wall is not complete, then I receive nothing," the builder stated firmly, his stony eyes meeting Odin's. "Not a single coin, not a single drop of mead. I will depart Asgard as I arrived, empty-handed. And if you succeed," Odin pressed, his voice laced with a dangerous edge. "The sun, the moon, and Freyja," the builder reiterated, his gaze once again settling on the golden-haired goddess, who shivered under his unwavering stare. It was then that Loki, ever the trickster saw his opening. He stepped forward, a sly smile beginning to play on his lips, a twinkle in his eye. This is a fool's errand. No man, not even one with such a grand steed as I see lurking in the shadows, can build such a wall in a single winter. Unless, of course, he receives aid from any man. His voice was smooth as silk, his words carefully chosen, a trap laid with meticulous precision. He knew the builder would agree. For what man could possibly help construct such a feat in such a short time? The builder's eyes, those ancient stones, narrowed imperceptibly. He seemed to weigh Loki's words, dissecting their meaning. No aid from any man, he agreed, his voice a low thrum. He seemed to understand the implication, the subtle challenge, and accepted it without hesitation. And if you finish even one day late, Loki pressed, his smile widening, a hint of triumph in his voice. If the first day of summer dawns and the final stone is not laid, the final mortar not dried, then the contract is null, the builder declared, his voice unwavering. The terms are clear. I fail, I get nothing. I succeed, I get my price. Loki turned to Odin, his expression a picture of feigned concern, though his eyes gleamed with mischief. Allfather, this is our chance. He will never finish in time. It is an impossible task for any mortal. We get a free wall, a stronger Asgard, and we lose nothing. His voice was persuasive, painting a picture of an advantageous bargain. Odin considered. The security of Asgard was paramount, a constant burden on his wise mind. If the builder failed, they lost nothing but a fleeting hope. If he succeeded, the cost was indeed terrible, but the promise of an unbreachable wall was almost too great to resist. He weighed the risks, the potential gains. Very well, Odin finally stated, his voice resonating with authority, silencing the remaining murmurs. The terms are accepted. Let the pact be sealed. The builder gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, a gesture of quiet triumph. I will begin at once. He turned to leave, his midnight blue cloak swirling around him. But as he did, a magnificent horse emerged from the deep shadows that clung to the outer edges of the hall. It was Svadilfari, the builder's loyal steed, its coat the color of storm clouds, a deep, mottled gray that seemed to shift with the light, its mane and tail like streaks of lightning. Its eyes glowed with an intelligent, almost human understanding. The gods gasped again, this time not in outrage, but in awe. Svadilfari was immense, radiating a raw, untamed strength that eclipsed any warhorse they had ever seen. Its muscles rippled under its dark coat, each stride a testament to its immense power. It moved with a silent, purposeful grace, its hooves barely seeming to touch the polished floor. My steed will assist me, the builder stated, his gaze fixed on Loki, a hint of something akin to scorn in his stony eyes. He is no man. Loki swallowed hard, his carefully constructed smile faltering, then collapsing. He had been so focused on man, on the precise wording of the contract, overlooking the obvious, the ancient, the powerful. His mind, usually so quick to find loopholes, had been blinded by its own cleverness. Svathelfari was clearly not a man. The contract was precise, utterly without ambiguity on that point. A cold dread, like the first icy breath of winter, began to creep into Loki's heart, chilling him to the bone. He had underestimated the builder, and more importantly, he had underestimated the builder's steed. His brilliant plan, the free wall, now seemed poised to backfire in spectacular, catastrophic fashion. The builder mounted Svathelfari, effortlessly swinging into the saddle, and with a silent, powerful stride, they vanished into the northern reaches of Asgard, towards the barren plains where the new wall was to rise. A heavy silence descended upon the hall, no longer one of anticipation, but of deep, gnawing unease. The gods looked at each other, their faces reflecting growing concern, their earlier outrage replaced by a dawning realization of the impossible gamble they had just taken. Loki's plan, so clever in its inception, seemed to be backfiring with terrifying speed. Freyja shivered, a deep, bone-chilling dread seizing her. Her vibrant beauty seemed to dim slightly as the reality of her potential fate settled upon her like a shroud. Thor clenched his jaw, his earlier anger now tinged with a surge of helpless fury, knowing he could do nothing but watch. Odin's single eye remained thoughtfully fixed on the empty space where the builder had been. This a battle of wits, a test of wills, on a scale even he had rarely encountered. The winter winds, sharp and biting, began to blow, carrying with them a deeper chill, a promise of the harsh season to come. The first snow fell, soft at first, then thicker, blanketing Asgard in a pristine, unforgiving white. In that cold, silent winter, the builder began his impossible work. From the frozen plains, the sounds of his labor began to echo across the land, the rhythmic clang of pickaxes against frozen earth, the deep rumble of massive stones being moved, a constant, unsettling reminder of the wager that hung over Asgard like a storm cloud. Svathelfari, with an almost supernatural strength, hauled massive stones from the distant quarries, its powerful strides eating up the miles, its breath steaming in the frigid air. The stones, ancient and dark, seemed to float behind the magnificent steed, defying the laws of physics. The builder, a tireless silhouette against the pale winter sky, worked with an unceasing, almost mechanical precision, shaping and setting each stone with an expert hand. The gods watched with growing apprehension. Each day, the wall began to rise, a dark, imposing line against the snowy landscape, built of the same ancient, unyielding stone as the builder's eyes. The builder and Svathelfari worked tirelessly, their combined efforts defying all logic, all reason. No mortal, no two beings, should have been able to achieve such a feat. Loki, his earlier amusement long vanished, visited the site often, his steps heavy with dread. He stalked the perimeter, searching for any weakness, any flaw in the construction, any sign of exhaustion in the builder or his steed. He hoped for a cracked stone, a sagging foundation, a moment of rest. a sign that the impossible task was finally taking its toll. But he found none. The builder was meticulous, his work flawless, each stone perfectly placed, each joint seamless. Svathelfari, though undoubtedly working hard, showed no signs of flagging, its magnificent frame as powerful as ever. Loki's gnawing fear grew with each passing day, twisting in his gut like a cold serpent. He had not only underestimated the builder, but he had catastrophically underestimated Svathelfari. The gods, their faces etched with worry, began to worry openly. "What if he succeeds?" whispered Frigg, her gentle voice filled with a rare tremor. "What if we lose the sun and the moon? And Freyja?" The thought was unbearable, a nightmare taking tangible form before their very eyes. The vibrant light of Asgard, the very essence of their lives, seemed to dim with each rising stone. The winter deepened, its grip tightening on Asgard, but the work continued unceasingly, defying the biting winds and the endless snowfalls. The wall grew taller and stronger, a monument to their combined power, a silent, looming threat to Asgard's cherished light. The sound of the builder's hammer, once a distant echo, now seemed to pound directly in their hearts. The end of winter drew near, the days slowly lengthening, the sun's arc rising higher in the sky. The wall was almost complete, a colossal, imposing barrier that seemed to touch the very clouds, casting a long, ominous shadow over the golden city. Loki paced restlessly, his mind a whirlwind of desperate schemes. His usual glib confidence had evaporated, replaced by a frantic energy. He had to find a way to stop the builder, to save Freyja, to save the sun and the moon. His cunning, his very essence, was put to the ultimate, most terrifying test. He knew, with a sickening certainty, that he had made a terrible mistake, one that could cost Asgard dearly, irrevocably. The fate of Asgard, its very light and joy, now rested squarely on his shoulders, a burden heavier than any he had ever carried. He had to find a new loophole, a new trick, a way to ensure the builder failed before the first day of summer, before the final, damning stone was laid. The clock was ticking, each lengthening ray of sunlight a cruel reminder of the approaching deadline. The sun was rising earlier, its golden light illuminating the towering, almost finished wall, a stark symbol of his folly. Loki looked out at the rising sun, its golden rays touching the towering, dark wall, painting it in hues of orange and red. It was a beautiful sight, but to him, it was a terrifying one. He knew he had to act, and he had to act now. He had to prevent the builder's triumph, to save Asgard from an unimaginable loss. The weight of his colossal folly pressed down on him, a physical ache in his chest. He had been too confident, too clever by half, and now Asgard was paying the price. Now he had to be truly cunning, not just mischievous. He had to find a solution, a desperate, audacious plan, before the final stone was laid, before Asgard lost its light and its beloved goddess, before the world plunged into an eternal, cold twilight. The night was long, filled with shadows and the whisper of the winter wind. Loki's mind worked tirelessly, a frantic forge of ideas, discarding one after another, searching for the impossible. The future of Asgard, its very existence as they knew it, hung in the balance. A silent, suspenseful wait for the dawn of the final day. The builder began his work. He moved with quiet purpose. His hands were strong and steady. He surveyed the vast, open plain. This was where Asgard's wall would rise. Then he called his horse. A low whistle cut the air. Svathelfari appeared. The stallion was magnificent. His coat shimmered like polished obsidian. His mane flowed like spun starlight. His eyes held ancient wisdom. Svathelfari was no ordinary steed. He was a creature of immense power. His muscles rippled beneath his dark hide. His hooves were like thunder. Each step vibrated through the earth. He approached the builder. He lowered his great head. A soft nuzzle touched the man's shoulder. The builder spoke to him gently. His voice was a murmuring stream. Svathelfari listened intently. He understood every word. They shared a deep, unspoken bond. It was a partnership of trust. It was a bond of tireless effort. Soon the work commenced. Svathelfari pulled a massive stone. It was larger than any cart. He moved it effortlessly. His strength was truly astonishing. The ground barely trembled. The stone slid into place. The builder worked alongside him. He shaped the raw earth. He laid the foundation stones. He moved with practiced ease. His movements were fluid and precise. They worked in perfect synchronicity. They were a single, purposeful unit. The first day passed quickly. The gods observed from afar. They stood on the golden plains. They watched from Gladsheim's walls. Odin stroked his long beard. Heimdall peered with keen eyes. Freyja stood beside them. They saw the initial progress. A low wall began to form. It stretched across the landscape. The builder seemed tireless. Svathelfari was tireless too. The gods exchanged glances. A flicker of amusement touched their faces. He works diligently, Odin remarked. His voice was calm and measured. But this is a vast undertaking. He gestured to the horizon. A wall around all Asgard. Heimdall nodded slowly. Indeed, Allfather. His gaze was unwavering. It will require immense time. He turned his attention back. Even with such a beast. Freyja said nothing. She watched the builder. She watched Svathelfari. A prickle of unease started. It was a very small sensation. It was a whisper of a doubt. Loki stood nearby. He chuckled softly. His eyes gleamed with mischief. He is earnest enough. He smoothed his silk tunic. But time is fleeting, my friends. He smiled a knowing smile. This wall will never be finished. The days turned into nights. The work continued without pause. Svathelfari's pace never faltered. He hauled stones of colossal size. He dragged them from distant quarries. He brought them to the building site. His breath plumed in the cool air. His hooves pounded a steady rhythm. The builder never rested. He shaped the rough-hewn blocks. He mortared them with skill. He raised the wall higher. His hands moved with tireless speed. His brow was always furrowed. His focus was absolute. The gods watched in growing surprise. The wall rose with incredible speed. It grew taller and thicker. It stretched further and further. What seemed impossible was happening. Their amusement began to fade. Odin's brow furrowed now. He saw the rapid progress. This is unexpected. His voice held a hint of concern. His horse is truly remarkable. Heimdall's eyes widened slightly. He saw the wall's swift ascent. The speed is unnatural. He adjusted his grip on Gjallarhorn. I have never witnessed such a thing. Freyja's unease deepened. The whisper became a murmur. She watched Svathelfari's tireless efforts. He moved with unwavering power. He seemed to defy exhaustion. Her heart beat a little faster. Loki's smile had vanished. His eyes scanned the wall. It was nearing completion, far faster than he had thought. A cold knot formed in his stomach. He had miscalculated, a grave miscalculation. He is working too quickly, Loki muttered. His voice was tight. He pulled at his beard. This was not part of the plan. He paced nervously. The builder and Svathelfari continued. They worked through sun and moon. They worked through mist and dew. The wall climbed steadily higher. It became an impressive structure. It was strong and imposing. The gods convened once more. Their faces held deep worry. The deadline was fast approaching. The wall was almost complete. Only a small section remained. This cannot be, Odin declared. His voice was firm. This wall will be finished. He looked at Loki. His gaze was piercing. And then we pay the price. Heimdall's face was grim. Freyja, the sun, the moon. He listed the dire payment. An unbearable loss, Allfather. His hand rested on his horn. Freyja felt a chill. The whisper was now a shout. Her radiant beauty was at stake. The very light of Asgard, too. She looked at Loki with dread. Her eyes held accusation. Loki squirmed under their gazes. He stammered for an answer. I did not foresee this. He wrung his hands. His horse is too powerful. He looked desperate. You made this wager, Loki. Odin's voice was stern. You assured us of his failure. His eyes narrowed. Now we face ruin. Thor was still away. He was on a distant quest. He battled frost giants. He cleared dangerous realms. His absence was keenly felt. His strength was sorely missed. His mighty hammer, Mjolnir, was absent. Its thunderous presence was needed. Its protective power was gone. The gods felt vulnerable. They felt exposed. They felt fear. Loki felt immense pressure. He had to stop this. He had to save Asgard. He had to save Freyja. He had to save himself. His mind raced frantically. He sought a solution. He watched Svathelfari. The stallion moved tirelessly. He brought another colossal stone. He placed it with precision. The wall was almost done. Loki's panic grew. He knew he had to act. He had to act quickly. The sun would soon set. The deadline would arrive. He had to devise a plan. A cunning plan. A desperate plan. His eyes scanned the horizon. He saw the last section. It was a small gap now. The builder worked steadily. Svathelfari moved purposefully. Time was running out. Loki's mind spun. He thought of trickery. He thought of deceit. He thought of magic. He thought of anything. He needed to distract the horse. He needed to stop the work. A mischievous glint appeared. It returned to his eyes. A desperate idea formed. It was risky and audacious. It was Loki's true nature. He would use his shape-shifting. He would use his cunning. He would become something else. Something alluring to a horse. Something that would tempt Svathelfari. Something that would lead him away. Away from the wall. Away from his duty. Loki took a deep breath. He prepared for the transformation. His body shimmered and changed. His form began to shift. He would become a mare. A beautiful, tempting mare. He would lure Svathelfari. He would lead him astray. He would gain precious time. He would save Asgard. He would save Freyja. He had to succeed. There was no other choice. The builder continued his work. He was unaware of Loki's plan. He was unaware of the gods' despair. His focus was purely on the wall. His goal was almost met. Svathelfari brought the next stone. He laid it gently down. The wall was nearing completion. Only a tiny gap remained. The builder smiled faintly. His task was almost done. Loki, now in his new form, moved. He trotted gracefully forward. His coat was shimmering black. His mane was long and flowing. His eyes held a seductive glint. He neighed softly. Svathelfari paused his work. He lifted his massive head. He heard the distant neigh. He smelled the new presence. His ears twitched forward. His powerful body tensed. The builder looked up. He saw the mare. He saw Svathelfari's reaction. A flicker of concern crossed his face. This was unexpected. This was a distraction. Loki neighed again. It was a call of invitation. It was a promise of freedom. It was a lure of desire. Svathelfari hesitated. His loyalty was to the builder, but instinct pulled him away. The wall was so close, just a few more stones. The builder urged him on, but Svathelfari was torn. The mare called again. Her voice was irresistible. With a powerful surge, Svathelfari bolted. He ran towards the mare. He ran with astounding speed. He left the half-finished wall. He left the desperate builder. He followed the enticing call. Loki led him away. He galloped across the plains. He led Svathelfari further, further and further away. The builder watched them go. His face was a mask of despair. His grand work stood unfinished. The gods watched from Asgard. They saw Svathelfari run. They saw him follow the mare. A collective sigh escaped them. A moment of relief washed over. Loki's plan had worked. The the sun began to set. Its golden light faded. The deadline approached, but the wall was not complete. A small gap remained. The builder's task was undone. The builder stood alone. He looked at the unfinished wall. His powerful horse was gone. His tireless companion was gone. His dream was shattered. He knew he had failed. He looked up at Asgard. He saw the distant gods. He knew their terms. He had not fulfilled them. The payment was not due. He had lost the wager. A deep rage filled him, a fury that simmered. He had been tricked. He had been betrayed. His magnificent horse was lured away. His life's work was destroyed. He roared in frustration. A guttural sound escaped him. It echoed across the plains. The gods heard his cry. They felt the tremor of his anger. They knew his true nature. The builder was no mere man. He was a Jotun. He was a frost giant. His true form began to emerge. His skin turned cold and blue. His size grew immense. Odin's eyes widened. Heimdall gripped Gjallarhorn. Freyja gasped in fear. Loki watched in horror. The builder was revealing himself. He was revealing his monstrous form. His eyes glowed with malice. His powerful hands clenched. He had been denied his prize. He had been denied Freyja. He had been denied the sun and moon. He would have his revenge. He charged towards Asgard. His giant strides shook the earth. His roar was like thunder. The gods knew true fear. They had provoked a giant. They had angered a monster. Loki felt a cold dread. His cunning had saved Asgard, but it had unleashed something worse. He had to stop the giant. He had to defend Asgard. He had made this mess. Then a mighty sound. A sound of thunder and fury. It echoed from the distance. A familiar, powerful sound. It was the sound of Mjolnir. It was the sound of Thor. Thor had returned. He had heard the giant's roar. He had felt the earth tremble. He had seen the charging monster. He arrived in a flash of lightning. He stood ready to defend Asgard. His hammer gleamed. His eyes blazed. He faced the giant. The battle was about to begin. The fate of Asgard hung in the balance. The consequences of Loki's wager. The biting wind still howled, winter clinging stubbornly. 3 days remained until its end. The wall of Asgard, a formidable stone barrier, rose almost complete, a testament to the builder's tireless work. But the gods gathered in the great hall, their faces etched with anger. Odin, Thor, Freya, even Bragi, all eyes, cold and condemning, fixed upon Loki. Loki, ever the trickster, usually reveled in attention. Tonight, his smirk was gone. He stood before the Aesir and Vanir, shoulders hunched, eyes darting nervously. The air crackled with their collective fury, pressing down upon him. Loki, Odin's voice boomed, laced with dangerous disappointment. Your foolish scheme, it has brought us to ruin. Loki swallowed hard. Thor stepped forward, Mjolnir clutched tightly. You promised us a way out, he snarled. You promised us a trick to save Freyja, the sun, and the moon. Freyja, tears welling, whispered, "My freedom, my very being, it hangs by a thread. And the light of the world, it will be extinguished." The builder, a giant of immense strength, and his horse, Svathelfari, had worked tirelessly. The wall, nearly finished, stood as a monument to their relentless labor. The gods had been so sure the builder couldn't finish in time, assured by Loki's silver tongue. He had convinced them the builder was too slow, that the wall would never be completed within the allotted time. His assurances had been so convincing that the gods agreed to the outrageous terms. Now, those promises felt like bitter ashes. The wall was almost done. The builder had proven them wrong, and Loki had trapped them all. "If Freyja is lost," Odin continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "if the sun and the moon are taken from us, know this, Loki. The consequences for you will be dire." Loki shivered. He knew Odin's threats were not idle. He had miscalculated terribly, underestimating the builder's dedication and Svathelfari's power. His hubris had led them to the brink. A cold sweat beaded on Loki's brow. He looked at the gods, angry, fearful faces. He was to blame. I will fix this," Loki stammered, trying to project confidence. "I will find a way." Thor scoffed. "What way, Loki? The wall is almost finished. There are only 3 days left." Loki's mind raced. He needed a plan, something unexpected to throw the builder off balance. He needed time. The key, perhaps, lay with Svathelfari. Without the horse, the wall couldn't be completed in time. But how to stop Svathelfari? Loki's eyes narrowed. He was the god of mischief, master of shapeshifting. He could become anything. A mischievous glint returned to his eyes. An outrageous, preposterous idea began to form. It was risky, humiliating even, but it might just work. He took a deep breath, pushing down shame. He looked at the desperate gods. He had to try. "I have a plan," Loki announced, his voice gaining theatrical flair. The gods looked skeptical. "What is it?" Odin asked, still dangerous. Loki hesitated, then plunged ahead. "I will distract Svathelfari. I will lure him away from the builder." Thor snorted. "How? With what?" "I will transform," Loki said, a strange light in his eyes, "into something irresistible to a horse." He paused, letting the implication hang. A ripple of confusion, then dawning realization, spread through the gods. Their expressions shifted to bewildered shock. "You mean," Freyja began, eyes widening. Loki nodded. "A beautiful mare," he declared, a faint blush rising on his cheeks. His lips curved into a wry smile. The idea was absurd, but his only option. A stunned silence fell. Even Odin looked speechless. Thor's jaw dropped. "Are you serious, Loki?" Bragi squeaked. "Desperate times, Bragi," Loki replied, a glint of mischief returning. "Desperate measures." He strode out, leaving the gods bewildered. The biting wind whipped around Asgard, but Loki felt a strange purpose. Humiliating as it would be, This plan was his only hope. He made his way towards the construction site, the sounds of Svadilfari's hooves and the builder's grunts echoing. The wall was massive, almost complete. He found a secluded grove, hidden by gnarled trees. He closed his eyes, focusing his will, drawing upon ancient magic. He felt the familiar tingle, the shifting of his essence. His skin softened, bones reshaped. His hair became a flowing mane, black as midnight. Limbs elongated into powerful legs. A tail sprouted. His eyes transformed into large, liquid pools. His senses sharpened. With a final surge of magic, Loki completed his transformation. He stood, no longer the trickster god, but a magnificent mare. His coat was shimmering, deep black, like polished obsidian. His mane and tail were long and silken. His movements were fluid, graceful. He took a tentative step, testing his new form. He shook his head, his new mane rustling softly. He let out a soft whinny. It felt surprisingly natural. Now for the hard part. He had to find Svadilfari and lure him away. Loki, in his new form, moved towards the sounds of the builder's work. He approached the wall, partially hidden by trees, observing Svadilfari. The mighty horse was powerful and tireless, muscles rippling as he strained against heavy loads. Loki let out a soft whinny, a low, inviting sound on the cold wind. Svadilfari, focused on his task, lifted his head, ears twitching. He seemed to sense something. Loki whinnied again, a little louder, playful and enticing. He emerged from the shadows, stepping into the pale moonlight. He moved with deliberate slowness, allowing Svadilfari to take in his magnificent form. Svadilfari's head snapped up. His eyes widened. He let out a low nicker of surprise and interest. He had never seen such a beautiful mare. His powerful body trembled. The builder, noticing Svadilfari's distraction, barked, "Svadilfari, back to work." But the mighty horse was no longer listening. His gaze was fixed on the shimmering black mare. He took a hesitant step towards her, forgetting his load. Loki, seeing his plan work, whinnied again, soft and encouraging. He took a few steps back, inviting Svadilfari to follow. He moved with a deliberate sway, designed to entice. Svadilfari whinnied loudly in response, powerful and eager. He strained against his harness, eyes never leaving the beautiful mare. The builder pulled his reins, but Svadilfari was beyond control. With a mighty surge, Svadilfari broke free. The chains clanged as he pulled away. The builder cried out, but it was too late. Svadilfari trotted towards the enchanting mare. Loki, satisfied, turned and galloped into the deeper forest, black mane and tail streaming. He moved with exhilarating freedom. He heard Svadilfari thundering close behind, heavy hooves shaking the earth. He led Svadilfari deeper and deeper, away from the construction site. He darted through trees, leaping over logs, agile and swift. Svadilfari, captivated, followed eagerly. chase continued through the night, a playful dance. Loki, elusive, always just out of reach, always leading Svathelfari further. Hours passed. The moon began to dip. The builder would be desperate. The wall remained unfinished. Loki, his mare's heart pounding, felt triumph. His outrageous plan was working. Svathelfari was thoroughly distracted. The wall would not be finished in time. Freyja, the sun, and the moon would be safe. He led Svathelfari to a hidden glade, a sheltered spot surrounded by fir trees. He slowed to a walk, then stopped, turning to face his pursuer. Svathelfari, breathing heavily, approached, eyes filled with longing. He nudged her gently. Loki felt a strange pang of pity, but he quickly pushed it aside. This was a trick, a desperate measure. He had to stay focused. He remained with Svathelfari, keeping him distracted. Hours slipped by. The sun rose. The builder, undoubtedly, was frantic. Loki knew his time in this form was limited. He had achieved his goal. The wall would not be completed. The gods would be safe. But the consequences of this trick would be far-reaching and unexpected. He felt a strange flutter in his belly. He looked at Svathelfari, utterly devoted. The horse had been completely bewitched. The trick had worked perfectly. The wall of Asgard would remain unfinished. Asgard, for now, was safe. The dawn broke, cold and clear. Loki, the black mare, knew his work was done. The biting winds still howled. Snowflakes, dense and relentless, danced through the air. But a different chill settled over Asgard. It was the chill of growing dread. The builder, Hrimthur, stood before his unfinished work. His heavy cloak, once meticulously draped, now hung askew. His usually calm demeanor had fractured. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Svathelfari was gone. The magnificent stallion, whose strength had been the very engine of the wall's construction, was nowhere to be found. Hrimthur's powerful hands, accustomed to shaping stone, now clenched into fists. His broad shoulders, usually relaxed, were rigid with tension. He paced the frozen ground. Each step was heavy, deliberate. His eyes, once shrewd and calculating, now burned with a cold fury. They scanned the horizon, searching, hoping. But there was only empty, swirling white. The deadline loomed. The last grains of winter were slipping away. The wall, a monumental achievement, remained agonizingly incomplete. A single, gaping section awaited its final stones. Without Svathelfari, those stones would not budge. Hrimthur's breath plumed in the frigid air. It was a ragged, angry plume. He stopped his pacing. He stared at the unfinished wall. Its raw, exposed edges mocked him. His frustration mounted, a slow, simmering heat. It began to melt the ice of his composure. A vein throbbed in his temple. His jaw tightened, a rigid line in his weathered face. He had worked tirelessly. Day and night he had toiled. His hands, calloused and strong, had laid every stone. His will, unyielding, had driven the project forward. And now this. A guttural sound escaped his throat. It was not a human sound. It was deeper, more resonant. It echoed across the silent, snow-covered plains. The few remaining Aesir guards, huddled for warmth, shivered. They exchanged uneasy glances. Hrimthur's eyes, usually a pale gray, began to shift. A faint, icy blue shimmered within them. It was a cold, alien light. His skin, previously weathered and ruddy, seemed to grow paler. It took on a strange, almost translucent quality. He raised a hand. It trembled slightly. He ran it over the rough surface of the incomplete wall. His touch was no longer the touch of a craftsman. It was the touch of something wild, something untamed. The air around him grew colder. A palpable chill radiated from his form. It seeped into the very ground. The snow beneath his heavy boots began to crackle. Fine tendrils of frost snaked across its surface. His breathing grew ragged. Each breath was a struggle. It was as if something vast and ancient was trying to push its way out. His body seemed to swell, ever so slightly. His cloak, already strained, stretched taut across his shoulders. A low growl, deeper than before, vibrated through the air. It was like the grinding of glaciers. It was the sound of immense power stirring. The ground beneath the Aesir guards began to tremble. They gripped their spears tighter. Their hearts pounded in their chests. Hrimthur threw back his head. His features contorted. The lines on his face deepened, becoming harsh, grotesque. His nose seemed to flatten. His brow became more pronounced, jutting forward. His eyes, now fully transformed, blazed with an arctic fire. They were vast, luminous pools of frozen rage. His skin continued to change. It became a mottled blue-gray. It was the color of ancient ice, of primordial frost. His hair, previously dark and coarse, began to lighten. It became streaked with white, like hoarfrost. It seemed to bristle, to stand on end. His frame expanded. His muscles, already formidable, swelled to monstrous proportions. The heavy cloak ripped. It tore along the seams. Shreds of fabric fluttered to the ground. They were insignificant against the colossal form that emerged. Hrimthur was gone. In his place stood a towering giant. He was a creature of immense power. His skin was the color of a winter sky, bruised and cold. His eyes glowed with an internal, icy light. His breath, when he exhaled, was a visible cloud of freezing mist. His true form was revealed. It was a terrifying spectacle. He was a Jotun, a frost giant. His monstrous appearance confirmed the gods' worst fears. The impossible bargain, the unyielding deadline, it all made a terrible sense now. He let out a roar. It was not a sound of frustration. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated fury. It ripped through the very fabric of the air. The sound was deafening. It was earth-shattering. The ground bucked beneath the giant's feet. the very stones of the incomplete wall groaned. The sound echoed across the plains, reaching the distant halls of Asgard. The gods within felt it. A tremor ran through the golden city. The giant, now fully revealed as Hrimthur, the frost giant, turned his blazing eyes towards Asgard. His roar continued, a primal scream of rage and betrayal. He had been tricked. His victory, so close, had been snatched away. He raised a colossal fist. It was the size of a boulder. His knuckles were raw and massive. His nails were like jagged shards of ice. He brought it down with unimaginable force. He struck the incomplete wall. The impact was cataclysmic. Stone exploded outwards. Shards of rock flew through the air like deadly missiles. The ground shook violently. He lashed out again. His blows were relentless. He was attempting to destroy what he could not complete. His fury was a tangible force. It threatened to engulf the entire realm. Each blow sent shockwaves through the earth. The very foundations of Asgard seemed to tremble. The giant's roars were constant. They were a terrifying symphony of destruction. He tore at the wall. His fingers, like immense claws, gouged deep furrows in the stone. He ripped out massive chunks. He threw them aside with contemptuous ease. The wall, a symbol of Asgard's impending safety, was now under attack. It was being dismantled by the very being who had constructed it. The irony was bitter. It was terrifying. The Aesir guards, frozen in terror, could only watch. They were small, insignificant figures against the towering rage of the Jotun. Their spears seemed like toothpicks. Their courage faltered. The giant's eyes burned with an infernal cold. They darted from the crumbling wall to the distant, gleaming spires of Asgard. His rage was boundless. It was directed at everything. It was directed at everyone. He let out another roar. This one was laced with pure hatred. He was not just destroying the wall. He was attempting to destroy the very piece of Asgard. He was seeking vengeance. He remembered the promises. He remembered the terms. He remembered the laughter of the gods, their smug confidence, their certainty of his failure. And now they would pay. His massive hands tore at the stone. He ripped out a section. It was larger than any hall in Asgard. He hurled it. It flew through the air, a deadly projectile. It landed with a thunderous crash. The ground shuddered. He was a whirlwind of destruction. His movements were swift, despite his size. He moved with a primal grace. It was the grace of a predator unleashed. The wind whipped around him. It carried the dust of crumbling stone. It carried the cold breath of his rage. It was a suffocating, terrifying wind. His monstrous form cast a vast shadow. It stretched across the snow-covered plains. It reached towards the golden city. It was a shadow of impending doom. He was a force of nature. He was an avalanche of anger. He was a blizzard of betrayal. His fury was absolute. It threatened to consume everything. The air crackled with his power. Frost spread from his feet. It coated the ground in a shimmering, deadly layer. It crept up the remaining sections of the wall. He roared again. This time, there was a triumphant note in his fury. He would not be defeated. He would not be denied. If he could not have his prize, then no one would. His destructive rampage continued. The sound of crumbling stone was constant. It was a relentless drumbeat of devastation. The wall, once a monument, was becoming a ruin. The gods in Asgard felt the tremors. They heard the roars. Their faces, usually serene, were now etched with concern. Their worst fears had materialized. The builder was no mere craftsman. He was a monumental threat. The giant's breath, a visible cloud of frigid mist, billowed around him. It enveloped him. He was like a phantom of the storm. He was a harbinger of winter's wrath. He raised his mighty foot. He brought it down. The impact was like a hammer blow. The ground split. A deep fissure opened. It snaked across the frozen earth. He was a force of chaos. He was a creature of destruction. His fury was a storm. It was a hurricane of ice and stone. It was aimed directly at Asgard. He would not stop. His rage was a bottomless well. It fueled his power. It drove his monstrous actions. He would tear down everything. He would leave nothing standing. The very air vibrated with his anger. It was a palpable presence. It pressed down on the land. It suffocated any hope. The giant's form seemed to grow even larger. He was a mountain of muscle and ice. His eyes, two burning orbs of blue, fixed on Asgard. A chilling smile, a rictus of pure malice, spread across his face. He had been humiliated. He had been outsmarted. But he would have his revenge. He would show them the true power of a Jotun. He would show them the consequences of their deceit. He pulled a massive, jagged stone from the wall. It was the size of a small house. He held it aloft. His muscles bulged. His entire body rippled with raw power. He drew back his arm. He prepared to hurl the colossal projectile. It was aimed at the very heart of Asgard. His roar intensified. It was a battle cry of vengeance. The wind howled around him. It was a mournful sound. It carried the giant's fury across the plains. It carried the promise of destruction. The remaining sections of the wall groaned under his assault. They began to crack. They began to crumble. The integrity of the structure was failing. He was a force of nature unleashed. He was a creature of myth made real. His fury was a terrifying spectacle. It was a nightmare come to life. He was immense. He was powerful. He was unstoppable. His rage was absolute. It was a force that defied reason. It defied control. He would not rest. He would not cease. Not until Asgard lay in ruins. Not until the gods understood the true cost of their trickery. His breath plumed again. It was a freezing cloud. It enveloped him in a shroud of mist. He was a specter of winter's end. He was the embodiment of chaos. The ground continued to tremble. The air continued to crackle. The sounds of destruction were relentless. The giant's fury was a terrifying symphony. He was a monument of ice and rage. He was a testament to betrayal. He was a threat unlike any Asgard had ever faced. And he was just getting started. He brought the massive stone forward. He launched it. It soared through the air. It was a deadly projectile. It was a symbol of his burning hatred. The stone flew towards Asgard. It was a dark shape against the snow. It was a harbinger of doom. The giant watched its trajectory. His eyes gleamed with cold satisfaction. His roar echoed. It was a sound of triumph. It was a sound of vengeance. It was the sound of a Jotun unleashed. And Asgard was caught in his terrible storm. The very air of Asgard, usually a symphony of harmonious magic, and the gentle murmur of a thriving civilization, had suddenly grown heavy, thick with an unseen dread. A profound, shuddering tremor, not of the earth, but of the very fabric of existence, ripped through the golden city. It was a tremor that resonated not just in the bedrock of Asgard, but in the very souls of its inhabitants, a deep, unsettling vibration that heralded ill tidings. Thor, high above, amidst the celestial currents that flowed around the Bifrost, felt it first. It was a cold, sharp pang that pierced through the usual warmth of Asgard's protective wards, a discordant note in the grand melody of his home. His mighty form, usually radiating an aura of vibrant life and jovial strength, tensed. His brow furrowed, a thundercloud gathering on the horizon of his thoughts. He descended swiftly, his descent not a casual flight, but a plummeting urgency. Mjolnir a blur of motion as it carried him through the celestial pathways. The vibrant hum of Asgard, a constant, reassuring thrum of life, the distant clatter of artisans' hammers, the joyous laughter of children playing in sun-dappled plazas, the melodic strains of harps from the royal gardens had been abruptly, violently silenced. It was replaced by an oppressive stillness, a vacuum of sound that pressed in on Thor, chilling him more than any icy blast. The golden spires of the city, usually catching the sunlight and radiating a joyous brilliance, now seemed to absorb the light, casting long, mournful shadows. The very air tasted of ozone and a metallic tang, like the scent of imminent storm, but colder, sharper, laced with the acrid tang of fear. Then he saw it. It was not a creature of the 9 realms he knew, not an invading horde of dark elves, or a beast from the outer reaches. This was something far more ancient, far more primal. A towering Jotun, a frost giant, loomed over the city walls. Not merely at the walls, but over asterisk them, its massive, craggy head scraping against the lowest clouds, its icy breath a visible mist that swirled like a shroud around the golden spires. Its skin, a mottled blue-gray, was like ancient glacier ice, scarred and pitted from eons of existence in the harsh, unforgiving landscapes of Jotunheim. Its eyes, deep-set, and glowing with an inner malevolent cold, fixed on Asgard below, twin points of glacial fire. Thor's eyes, usually wide and open, narrowed to slits of focused fury. A question, sharp as a spear, pierced his mind. How had such a behemoth, a creature of such immense power and scale, breached Asgard's formidable defenses? The very thought was anathema, a violation of everything he had sworn to protect. The golden gates, forged by the finest dwarf smiths, were legendary for their impregnability. The Bifrost, guarded by Heimdall, was the only true gateway. Had it simply walked through, the impossibility of it gnawed at him. The giant roared then, a sound that was not just loud, but ancient asterisk. It was a bellow that vibrated in Thor's very bones, a sound born of eons of animosity, of a hatred so profound it felt woven into the very fabric of the cosmos. It was the sound of ice cracking under immense pressure, of mountains groaning in geological shifts, of the very breath of a primordial god of winter. It spoke of a time before the Aesir, of an era when the frost giants ruled supreme, before Odin's conquest and the forging of the truce. This was not just an attack, it was a resurgence, a vengeful echo from a forgotten past. Thor's hand instinctively tightened around the worn leather grip of Mjolnir, the familiar weight a comforting anchor in the surging chaos of his emotions. The hammer thrummed in his grasp, eager for battle, a loyal companion mirroring his own rising wrath. He saw the destruction then, not just in the towering presence of the giant, but in the immediate aftermath of its monstrous arrival. The grand market square, usually bustling with vibrant life and the fragrant aroma of exotic spices, was a scene of utter devastation. Buildings, once proud and adorned with intricate carvings, were shattered. Their golden facades crumbled into glittering dust and rubble. Statues of revered heroes lay toppled, their marble forms cracked and defiled. The air was thick with the scent of pulverized stone, of broken wood, and the metallic tang of fear. Panic, a wild, untamed beast, ripped through the streets. The usually stoic and brave Asgardians, caught off guard, scattered like leaves in a gale. Their shouts, once expressions of defiance, were now guttural cries of terror, sharp and desperate. Children, their faces streaked with tears and dirt, clung to their parents, their small bodies trembling. The orderly flow of life in the Golden City had dissolved into a chaotic scramble for survival, a desperate flight from the colossal shadow that loomed over them. And then, amidst the chaos, amidst the swirling dust and the fleeing forms, Thor saw him. Loki, his brother. He was kneeling, or perhaps had fallen, near the giant's colossal, icy foot. His usually vibrant green and gold attire was torn, smudged with dust and grime. His face, usually a mask of wry amusement or cunning calculation, was utterly pale, devoid of color, and etched with a terrifying expression of defeat. His head was bowed, his dark hair falling over his face, obscuring his eyes, but the slump of his shoulders, the utter stillness of his form, spoke volumes of his broken spirit. A terrible realization, cold and sharp as a shard of ice, dawned on Thor. It was not a suspicion, not a fleeting thought, but a concrete, undeniable truth that settled in his gut with the weight of a fallen star. Loki. He was involved. This giant, this monstrous harbinger of destruction, was not merely an opportunistic invader. It was tied to Loki's trickery, to his endless, convoluted schemes, to his insatiable hunger for attention and power. This was not just an attack on Asgard. It was a betrayal, a wound inflicted by his own blood, threatening to tear apart the very foundations of their home, of everything they held dear. The anger that had been simmering within Thor, a low rumble of thunder, now erupted into a full-blown storm. A roar, primal and untamed, tore from Thor's throat, a sound that echoed the giant's own ancient hatred, but fueled by a righteous fury. It was a sound that shook the very air, a declaration of war. He launched himself forward, a golden blur against the muted backdrop of the ravaged city, Mjolnir spinning in a dizzying arc, accumulating power, whistling like a gale-force wind. The giant, its attention momentarily diverted by the fleeing populace, turned its massive head, its icy eyes fixing on the approaching thunder god. A sneer, slow and deliberate, stretched across its craggy face, revealing rows of jagged, ice-shard teeth. "You dare defile Asgard," Thor bellowed, his voice amplified by the power of his rage. A booming declaration that reverberated through the shattered streets. It was not a question, but an accusation, a challenge thrown at the very essence of the monstrous invader. The giant chuckled then, a sound like grinding glaciers, devoid of warmth, laced with a chilling arrogance. It raised a massive hand, its fingers like frozen tree trunks, and lunged, its movement surprisingly swift for its size, aiming to swat Thor from the air like a bothersome fly. Thor met the attack head-on, Mjolnir a blazing comet, striking the center of the giant's palm with a resounding asterisk crack. The sound was deafening, like 1,000 sheets of ice shattering at once, echoing through the wounded city. A shockwave rippled outwards, sending debris scattering. The giant reeled back, a guttural groan escaping its throat, a sound of surprise more than pain. A faint fissure, thin as a spiderweb, appeared on its icy skin, spreading from the point of impact. It was a superficial wound, but it was a wound nonetheless, a testament to Mjolnir's power. Thor pressed his advantage, not allowing the giant a moment to recover. He became a whirlwind of power, a golden blur of motion, striking again and again. Mjolnir became a relentless drumbeat against the giant's icy hide, each strike landing with concussive force, the crack and asterisk thud echoing through the devastated city. The giant roared in pain, its initial arrogance waning, replaced by a growing frustration and a dawning realization of its opponent's might. Its massive limbs flailed, trying to swat Thor away, but the thunder god was too swift, too focused. With a powerful leap, Thor soared upwards, landing firmly on the giant's massive arm, its icy surface cold and rough beneath his boots. He scaled the arm with incredible speed, a single-minded missile aimed for its head. The giant, enraged by this audacity, swatted at him with its other hand, a sweeping blow that could have crushed him. But Thor, anticipating the move, twisted in midair, dodging the blow with a hair's breadth. As he evaded, he brought Mjolnir down with all his might, striking the giant's temple. The sound was a dull asterisk thump, asterisk, but the impact sent a tremor through the giant's colossal frame. It staggered, its balance momentarily lost, its massive head lolling to one side. Thor, seizing the opportunity, called upon the storm, not a gentle rain, but a furious tempest. The very sky above Asgard, once a brilliant blue, darkened, swirling with ominous gray clouds. Lightning, thick and blinding, crackled from the heavens, converging on Mjolnir, channeling through Thor's very being. Bolts of pure, raw energy hammered down upon the giant, a relentless barrage of blinding light and deafening thunder. Its icy skin sizzled and smoked under the onslaught, the sound like steam escaping from a geyser, a visual testament to the immense heat generated by the lightning. The air filled with the acrid scent of burnt ozone and melting ice. Enraged, and perhaps sensing its own vulnerability, the giant lunged again, a desperate final charge, its remaining fist a colossal hammer of ice. Thor stood firm, his stance unwavering, a beacon of defiant power amidst the chaos. Mjolnir, glowing with the absorbed lightning, met the giant's fist with a direct, head-on impact. The collision was cataclysmic. A blinding flash of light erupted, followed by an explosion of sound that deafened all within earshot. The giant's hand, from the wrist down, exploded outwards, not in blood and gore, but in a shower of countless ice shards, glittering and razor-sharp, raining down upon the devastated city like deadly hail. A terrible, guttural howl, a sound of agony and defeat, tore from the giant's throat, echoing through the streets. Thor, propelled by the force of the impact, soared upwards, Mjolnir still glowing, radiating immense power. He hovered above the giant's shattered form, a golden silhouette against the darkening, stormy sky. For Asgard, he roared, his voice carrying above the dying sounds of the storm, a declaration of victory, a promise of protection. He plunged downwards, a living lightning bolt, Mjolnir leading the way, aimed directly for the giant's head, the very source of its ancient hatred. The hammer struck with a final, devastating blow. With a sound like 1,000 breaking glaciers, a sound that resonated with the very core of the world, the giant's colossal head exploded. It didn't bleed. It didn't shatter into bone and flesh. Instead, it disintegrated into countless sparkling ice shards, which shimmered for a moment in the air like falling diamonds, then dissipated into a cold, ethereal mist, vanishing as if it had never been. The monstrous threat, this ancient echo of Jotunheim, was gone, dissolved into nothingness. A profound silence descended then, not the oppressive stillness from before, but a silence of immense relief, a collective exhale from the battered city. The storm clouds began to recede, revealing the faint, bruised light of the setting sun. Thor landed, his boots touching the cold, shattered ground with a soft thud. He was weary, his muscles aching, his breath coming in ragged gasps, but he was victorious. The battle was won. His eyes, still blazing with a lingering intensity, found Loki. His brother was still kneeling, his head still bowed, a figure of utter defeat amidst the debris. The fear and anger that had fueled Thor's battle began to recede, replaced by a deep, profound sorrow. He walked towards Loki, his footsteps crunching softly on the scattered ice shards and rubble, each step a heavy weight against his heart. "Loki," Thor said, his voice quiet, devoid of the thunderous rage that had just shattered a giant. It was filled instead with a deep, aching sorrow, a lament for what had been lost, for what had been broken between them. "What have you done?" Loki finally stirred, his shoulders trembling. He slowly raised his head, his eyes, usually so sharp and mischievous, were clouded with a profound misery, shimmering with unshed tears. I meant no harm," he whispered, his voice thin and reedy, a stark contrast to the booming pronouncements he usually made. It was a plea, a desperate attempt at absolution. Thor sighed, the sound a ragged exhalation of weariness and disappointment. He looked at the shattered buildings, the terrified faces of the Asgardians slowly emerging from their hiding places, the lingering scent of destruction. "You endangered Asgard," he stated, his voice heavy with the weight of that truth. "You endangered our people. Millions of lives, Loki. For what?" Loki looked up, the tears finally overflowing, tracing paths through the dust on his pale cheeks. His lips trembled. "I only wanted to be seen," he confessed, the words a raw, vulnerable admission. "To be recognized, to be more than just Thor's brother." Thor's gaze softened, though the pain in his eyes remained. He looked at the shattered wall, a gaping wound in Asgard's golden facade, a stark and brutal testament to the cost of Loki's desperate desire for recognition. The rubble, the fear in the eyes of his people, this was the price of Loki's ambition, of his misguided attempts to carve out his own identity. "There are other ways, brother," he said softly, his voice filled with a gentle, aching sadness. "Ways that do not involve such destruction, such pain." "I am a monster," Loki whispered, his voice barely audible, choked with self-loathing. He pulled his knees to his chest, hunching over, as if trying to shrink away from the world, from the terrible truth of his actions. The weight of his guilt, of the chaos he had wrought, seemed to crush him. Thor knelt beside him, his strong, calloused hand reaching out, gently placing it on Loki's trembling shoulder. The simple touch, a gesture of comfort and connection, seemed to surprise Loki, who flinched slightly before relaxing into it. "No, Loki," Thor said, his voice firm but undeniably gentle, filled with an unwavering love that transcended the anger and betrayal. "You are my brother. You have made grave mistakes, terrible choices, yes, and the consequences are dire. But you are not a monster. You are lost." Loki slowly looked at him then, his tear-filled eyes searching Thor's. a glimmer, faint but undeniable, of hope flickering within their depths. The word lost seemed to resonate with him, a more accurate, less condemning label for the turbulent chaos within his soul. "What now?" he whispered, the question not of what punishment awaited him, but of what lay beyond this moment of despair. Thor stood, his gaze sweeping over the wounded city, now bathed in the soft, fading light of twilight. He saw the resilience in the faces of his people, the quiet determination that was already beginning to stir. "We rebuild," he said, his voice resonating with a quiet strength, a promise to his people and to himself. "We heal from the physical wounds and from the wounds of fear and distrust." He turned back to Loki, his gaze unwavering, a silent challenge in his eyes. "And you, brother, you will help." Loki's head snapped up, a flicker of surprise. Then something else, a dawning sense of purpose, perhaps even redemption crossing his face. His eyes, though still red-rimmed, held a newfound clarity. "I will," he said, his voice stronger now, no longer a whisper, but a quiet affirmation, a promise. Thor nodded, a weary smile, tinged with a profound relief, finally appearing on his face. The people of Asgard, who had been slowly emerging from their hiding places, seeing their champion standing victorious, now began to cheer. Not a thunderous roar, but a rising swell of gratitude and relief, a murmuring symphony of joy. Thor, in a gesture of reassurance and shared victory, raised Mjolnir, not in preparation for battle, but as a symbol of their enduring strength and the peace that had been won. The golden hammer, still radiating a faint, comforting warmth, seemed to hum in response. The sun, a fiery orb, dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of deep violet and fiery orange. As the last sliver of light vanished, the first stars, distant and shimmering, began to appear in the vast, inky canvas above. Asgard had been saved, scarred but not broken. Its golden spires, though damaged, still stood tall, defiant against the encroaching night. There was hope, not just for the city, but for the fractured bond of two brothers. Thor looked at Loki, who now stood beside him, no longer hunched in shame, but with his head held a little higher, his shoulders losing some of their defeated slump. He was still broken, yes, the weight of his actions still heavy upon him, but he was no longer lost. He had found a path, however difficult, back towards the light. The night deepened, a peaceful quiet settling over the golden realm. The sounds of rebuilding were still distant murmurs, but they were sounds of creation, not destruction. Asgard slept, its people slowly recovering from the terror, comforted by the watchful eye of its protector. A new day would dawn, a new chapter, not just for Asgard, but for the brothers who stood on its threshold. The echoes of the thunder god's hammer, a memory of the battle, and Thor's breath hitched in his chest, a raw, ragged sound. His hammer, Mjolnir, felt impossibly heavy, yet it hummed with a fierce, eager energy. The frost giant, massive and menacing, stood before him. Its icy eyes burned with an ancient, chilling fury. The air crackled with anticipation, a silent, tense hum. Around them, the battle battle-scarred earth lay testament to their struggle. Great fissures marred the ground. Shattered ice shards glistened like cruel jewels. Thor gripped Mjolnir, his knuckles white with strain. He remembered the giant's taunts, the chilling boasts of Asgard's fall. A surge of protective anger flared within him. This land, this sacred realm, would not succumb. Not while he still drew breath. Not while Mjolnir answered his call. With a primal roar, Thor lunged forward. Mjolnir became a blur of motion, a streaking comet of divine power. It met the giant's frost-hardened fist with a resounding crash. Sparks flew, glittering like a sudden shower of stars. The impact reverberated through the very foundations of the world. The giant staggered, a guttural cry escaping its lips. Its immense form wavered, momentarily thrown off balance. Thor pressed his advantage, his movements a symphony of strength and precision. He spun, a whirlwind of godly might. Mjolnir swung wide, then descended with devastating force. It struck the giant's chest, a blow that echoed through the 9 realms. The air shivered, a sound like distant thunder. The giant cried out, a sound of pure, unadulterated pain. Its eyes widened, reflecting a dawning horror. The very essence of its icy being seemed to crack. A blinding flash of light erupted, pure white energy. It enveloped the giant, consuming its colossal form. The ground beneath them trembled violently. Thor stood his ground, unwavering, resolute. He watched as the light intensified, then began to recede. The giant was gone, not shattered, not slain, but vanished. Mjolnir had not destroyed it entirely. Instead, it had opened a portal, a shimmering tear in the fabric of reality. The giant had been hurled back, banished to the desolate, frozen wastes of Jotunheim. A profound silence descended upon the battlefield. The only sound was Thor's heavy breathing, the thrum of Mjolnir in his hand. He lowered the hammer, its power still palpable. A wave of exhaustion washed over him, deep and bone-weary. But with it came a profound sense of relief. He looked around him, at the ruined landscape. The threat was averted. Asgard was safe. For now. He turned his gaze towards the city, its golden spires gleaming in the distant light. The wall of Asgard stood unfinished, a stark reminder of their folly. The gods began to emerge from their vantage points, their faces etched with a mixture of awe and relief. Odin, majestic and somber, approached Thor. His single eye surveyed the scene, then rested upon his son. A flicker of pride softened his stern features. "You have fought valiantly, my son," Odin's voice was deep, resonant. "Asgard owes you a debt of gratitude." Thor nodded, his gaze still fixed on the horizon. The weight of his victory settled upon him. It was a heavy burden, yet a righteous one. The Aesir gathered around, their expressions a mix of triumph and unease. The battle was won, but the consequences lingered. The unfinished wall stood as a gaping wound, a testament to their rashness. Freya, her face pale but resolute, approached. "The giant is banished," she said, her voice quiet, yet firm. "But the price of our complacency remains." She gestured towards the incomplete fortifications. The golden light of Asgard seemed to mock their vulnerability. Just then, a strange figure stumbled into view. It was not a god, nor was it fully animal. It possessed an awkward, ungainly gait. As it drew closer, the gods gasped. It was Loki, but transformed, and unmistakably, undeniably pregnant. His form was stretched, distended. His usually lithe body was round and heavy. His face, usually sharp and mischievous, was drawn and weary. His eyes, however, still held a flicker of their customary cunning, though heavily veiled by exhaustion. A collective murmur rippled through the gathered gods. Disbelief warred with outrage. Loki, the trickster, the shapeshifter, had returned. And in this utterly unexpected, utterly bizarre state, Odin's eye narrowed. His expression was unreadable. Loki, Odin's voice was a low rumble, tinged with both anger and a strange, almost reluctant curiosity. "What new trick is this?" Loki winced, a pained grimace. He clutched his swollen belly, as if to protect its contents. "No trick, Allfather," Loki rasped, his voice strained. "A consequence of my escapade." He swayed slightly, clearly weakened. Thor stepped forward, his brow furrowed with confusion. He had heard whispers, vague rumors. But this was beyond comprehension. "You are with child." Thor's voice was incredulous, a mixture of shock and bewilderment. Loki gave a weak, sardonic chuckle. "Indeed, brother. A rather unusual one, I assure you." He gestured vaguely towards his belly. Frigga, ever the compassionate one, moved closer. Her eyes softened with a flicker of concern. Even for the troublesome Loki, this was an unusual predicament. "What have you done, Loki?" she asked, her voice gentle, yet tinged with a mother's worry. Loki sighed, a long, weary exhalation. "I became a mare," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper, "to lure away the giant steed, to prevent him from completing his task." The gods exchanged bewildered glances. This was a tale stranger than any they had heard. "You sacrificed yourself?" Tyr, the god of war, asked, his voice gruff with disbelief. "For Asgard," Loki scoffed, a weak, bitter sound. "Not for Asgard, no. For my own skin, perhaps, and to avoid a terrible fate." He shuddered, a memory of his equine transformation. A wave of understanding began to dawn upon the gods. Loki, in his characteristic self-serving manner, had inadvertently saved them. His trickery, intended for his own amusement or escape, had prevented the giant from finishing the wall, had prevented him from claiming Freya, from seizing the sun and moon. "So your mischief," Odin mused, his voice still low, yet with a hint of something akin to grudging respect, "has, by sheer accident, saved us from our own folly." Loki merely nodded, too exhausted to offer a witty retort. The god's anger, though still present, began to dissipate, replaced by a complex mixture of relief and bewildered amusement. Loki, the bane of their existence, had become their unwitting savior. It was a bitter pill to swallow, yet undeniably true. He must still face judgment, Heimdall declared, his voice resonant, for his deceptions, for his constant meddling. But even Heimdall's tone lacked its usual conviction. The immediate threat was gone, and Loki, in his current state, seemed hardly a menace. Odin raised a hand, silencing the murmurs. "He will," he stated, his gaze fixed on Loki. "But not now. He is indisposed." A faint, almost imperceptible smirk touched Odin's lips. "And he has, inadvertently, spared us a great humiliation." Loki's eyes flickered with a hint of gratitude. Even Odin, with all his wisdom, seemed to recognize the bizarre irony of the situation. Loki had been spared, not by his own cunning, but by the sheer, unexpected consequences of his actions. The gods turned their attention back to the unfinished wall. It stood as a stark monument to their vulnerability, a painful reminder of the dangers of complacency. They had been too quick to trust, too eager to believe in a quick fix. "We were foolish," Thor admitted, his voice heavy with self-reproach. He looked at Odin, at the other gods. "We allowed ourselves to be blinded by the promise of an easy solution." Odin nodded slowly. "Indeed, my son, a harsh lesson learned." Frigga stepped forward, her gaze sweeping over the assembled gods. "We must not forget this day," she said, her voice clear and strong. "The price of overconfidence can be devastating. Vigilance is not merely for our enemies, but for ourselves." The gods stood in silence, absorbing her words. The air, once thick with tension, now held a quiet solemnity. They had faced a grave threat. They had emerged victorious, but they had also faced their own shortcomings, their own hubris. They looked at Loki, still clutching his swollen belly. A strange, almost mythical creature was growing within him, a creature born of deception, yet also of an accidental salvation. The irony was not lost on them. The sun began to set, casting long, golden shadows across the land. The unfinished wall glowed in the fading light. It was a scar, yet also a symbol of their resilience, their strength, and a permanent reminder of the lessons learned. The Aesir had grown complacent. They had relied too heavily on their own power, on their divine status. They had forgotten the importance of humility, of caution, and of the unpredictable nature of fate. Thor looked at Mjolnir, at the power it wielded. It was a tool of protection, a force for justice. But it was not a shield against their own errors, their own misjudgments. The true strength of Asgard lay not just in its warriors, but in its wisdom, in its ability to learn from its mistakes. He looked at Loki, who was now being gently led away by Frigga. The trickster god, the accidental hero. His presence was a stark reminder of the chaotic forces that sometimes shaped their world. Forces that could be both destructive and, strangely, redemptive. The gods dispersed, each carrying the weight of the day's events. The victory was sweet, but it was tempered by the bitter taste of self-reproach. They would learn from this. They would rebuild not just the wall, but their own defenses, their own wisdom. The stars began to emerge, pinpricks of light in the vast, darkening sky. Asgard, though safe, was forever changed. The wall of Asgard, unfinished and imperfect, stood as a silent witness, a monument to a lesson hard won, a reminder that even gods could falter, and that true strength lay not only in power, but in humility, vigilance, and the enduring spirit of learning. The air grew cool, a gentle breeze whispering through the golden city. A new chapter had begun. The golden light spilled, soft and low, across the broken fields. It touched the shattered stones. It warmed the weary faces of the gods. A new day had truly dawned for Asgard. The air, once thick with tension, now hummed with a quiet, hopeful energy. The gods looked around them. They saw the devastation. They felt the lingering fear. Yet, something else stirred within them. It was a shared resolve. It was a newfound understanding. Odin stood on the highest undamaged rampart. His one eye surveyed his realm. The vastness of the sky stretched above him. The broken earth lay below. He saw the industrious dwarves. They bustled about. They began to clear the rubble. He heard the gentle murmur of voices. They were filled with determination. He felt a deep sense of peace. It settled in his ancient heart. It had been a close call. Asgard had nearly fallen. Its very essence had been threatened. Thor, his hammer Mjolnir now resting at his side, knelt beside a fallen section of the wall. He picked up a loose stone. It was rough and cold in his hand. He turned it over thoughtfully. His usual boisterous energy was subdued now. A quiet seriousness had replaced it. He looked towards his father. He nodded slowly. His brow was furrowed in thought. He understood the gravity of their recent peril. He saw the need for change. Freyja, her golden hair shimmering in the morning light, walked among the other goddesses. She offered words of comfort. She shared gentle smiles. Her relief was palpable. Her safety had been secured. Her freedom was reaffirmed. She had faced a terrible fate. She had almost been lost to them forever. Her presence now was a beacon. It was a symbol of their triumph. It was a promise of future peace. The sun, Sol, climbed higher in the sky. Its rays warmed the air. They dried the dew from the grass. The clouds, once heavy with storm, had dispersed. They revealed a sky of brilliant blue. The birds began to sing. Their melodies were sweet and clear. Life was returning to Asgard. It was slowly, steadily coming back. The rhythm of the cosmos was reasserting itself. Mani, the moon, though now unseen, would soon begin his nightly vigil. His watchful eye would guard the realm. His gentle light would banish the shadows. The cosmic order had been restored. The balance had been regained. The gods had learned a painful lesson. They would never forget it. The clearing of the rubble began in earnest. It was a slow, arduous task. Each stone was heavy, each beam was cumbersome, but the gods worked together. They moved with a newfound purpose. Odin himself lifted a splintered timber. He placed it carefully aside. His strength, though immense, was used with deliberation. He set an example for all. Frigg, her hand resting on Odin's arm, offered quiet counsel. Her wisdom was a steadying force. She spoke of resilience. She spoke of unity. Her eyes, filled with compassion, surveyed her children. She saw their weariness. She saw their resolve. She knew the path ahead was long, but she also knew they would walk it together. Heimdall, ever vigilant, stood at his post on Bifrost. His gaze swept the horizon. His horn, Gjallarhorn, remained silent, but his senses were acutely attuned. He listened to the whispers of the wind. He felt the subtle shifts in the air. His watchfulness was now absolute. No threat would slip past him again. The dwarves, skilled laborers, offered their expertise. They advised on the proper placement of stones. They showed the gods how to mix mortar. Their movements were precise. Their knowledge was invaluable. They had been instrumental in the past. They would be instrumental now. Their presence was a comfort. It was a sign of renewed cooperation. The sound of hammers began to ring out. It was a steady, rhythmic beat. It echoed across the plains. It was the sound of creation. It was the sound of rebuilding. It was a testament to their commitment. They would not rely on others. They would build their own defenses. They would forge their own security. Loki, though still under observation, was given small tasks. He carried water. He sorted tools. His usual mischievous glint was subdued. A flicker of something else was in his eyes. Was it remorse? Was it understanding? Perhaps. He had played a dangerous game. He had nearly lost everything. Idun, her basket of golden apples close by, offered sustenance. Her fruit brought renewed energy. It brought vigor to weary limbs. The gods ate slowly. They savored the taste. It was a taste of life. It was a taste of hope. Her contribution was vital. It nourished both body and spirit. Bragi, the god of poetry, began to hum a low tune. It was a song of remembrance. It was a song of strength. His voice, usually booming, was soft now. It filled the air with gentle melody. It brought comfort to those around him. It reminded them of their shared history. It spoke of their resilience. The goddesses, often relegated to domestic tasks, now worked alongside the gods. Sif, her golden hair tied back, lifted heavy rocks. She moved with surprising strength. She showed no hesitation. Her determination was clear. She would protect her home. She would defend her family. Nanna, Baldur's wife, though still grieving, found solace in the shared labor. Her hands, usually delicate, now gripped tools firmly. She worked with quiet resolve. Her sorrow was still present. Yet, a flicker of hope began to glow within her. She found purpose in their collective effort. The children of Asgard, no longer confined indoors, watched from a safe distance. Their eyes were wide with curiosity. They saw their parents working. They saw their gods laboring. They would grow up with this memory. They would understand the value of unity. They would learn the meaning of hard work. The sun began its slow descent. The sky turned to hues of orange and purple. The first day of rebuilding was drawing to a close. Weary but resolute, the gods gathered. They shared a simple meal. Their conversations were quiet. They were filled with reflection. They spoke of the day's progress. They spoke of the work still to come. Odin addressed them. His voice was low. It was filled with quiet authority. "We have learned much," he said. "We have faced our weaknesses. We have seen our true strength." He looked at each of them in turn. His gaze was steady. It was filled with pride. "Our walls may be broken," he continued, "but our spirit is not." He spoke of the future. He spoke of vigilance. He spoke of unity. "True safety," he declared, "comes not from stones alone. It comes from within us. It comes from our wisdom. It comes from our watchfulness. It comes from our bonds." His words resonated deeply. They echoed in the hearts of all. Thor, his muscles aching, nodded in agreement. He had always relied on his strength. He had always believed in his might. But now he saw a deeper truth. He saw the power of collective effort. He saw the strength in shared purpose. His understanding had deepened. His wisdom had grown. Freyja, her exhaustion evident, still radiated a quiet grace. She understood the cost of their freedom. She understood the value of their unity. She would protect Asgard. She would fight for her place. Her spirit was unyielding. Her resolve was complete. The moon, Mani, began to rise. Its pale light cast long shadows. It illuminated the partially cleared fields. It highlighted the stacked stones. The work would continue tomorrow. It would continue the day after. It would continue until Asgard was whole again. The gods slept soundly that night. Their dreams were filled with images of construction. They dreamed of strong foundations. They dreamed of towering walls. They dreamed of a secure future. They dreamed of a united realm. The rebuilding process stretched into weeks. It stretched into months. Each day brought new challenges. Each day brought new victories. The gods learned new skills. They honed their abilities. They worked with their hands. They worked with their hearts. They learned to cut stone. They learned to mix mortar. They learned to raise beams. Their hands, once accustomed to weapons and magic, now became calloused and strong. They found a new sense of pride. They found a new sense of accomplishment. The new wall began to rise. It was not as grand as the one before. It was not as imposing, but it was stronger in a different way. It was built with their own hands. It was infused with their own resolve. It was a monument to their unity. The sun and moon continued their eternal dance. Sol brought warmth and light. Mani brought cool serenity. Their consistent presence was a comfort. It was a reminder of the enduring order of the cosmos. It was a symbol of hope. Freyja, now fully recovered, often visited the construction sites. She offered encouragement. She brought fresh water. Her smile was a ray of sunshine. Her presence was a blessing. She was a vital part of Asgard. She was deeply loved. The children of Asgard, once merely observers, now helped where they could. They carried small stones. They fetched tools. They learned from their elders. They absorbed the lessons of resilience. They understood the importance of community. The tales of the builder and his giant wolf became cautionary legends. They were whispered around campfires. They were told to eager young ears. They served as a constant reminder. They spoke of the dangers of complacency. They highlighted the value of vigilance. Odin often walked the growing wall. He ran his hand over the rough stone. He felt the painstaking effort. He saw the dedication. He knew that this wall, though different, was far more meaningful. It was a wall of shared sacrifice. It was a wall of collective strength. The lessons of the past were deeply ingrained. The gods would never again take their security for granted. They would never again rely on external forces. They would look within themselves. They would trust in their own unity. The realm of Asgard, though forever changed, was stronger than before. It was not just a place of golden halls. It was a home built on resilience. It was a sanctuary forged in unity. It was a testament to the enduring spirit of its gods. The sun rose higher. Its light bathed the growing wall. The sounds of hammers continued. The voices of the gods, now filled with purpose, echoed across the land. Asgard was rebuilding. Asgard was thriving. Asgard was safe, not because of an impenetrable wall, but because of its own awakened heart. If these whispers brought you rest, you're welcome to subscribe for more calm tales. A gentle, like also guides fellow night owls here.